Welcome to this latest edition of York County Economic Development in Focus. I'm Jim Noel, Director of Economic Development for York County, and joining me today is our County Administrator, Neil Morgan. Neil, thank you for being here.
Certainly, my pleasure.
Our topic today is investing in York County, and our first subject matter is going to be the Route 17 corridor. And Neil, I know that has been something that you have been very focused on and something you wanted to work on, and we've got some programs going on now. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how we're investing in the corridor?
Well, I guess the most important thing to say, first of all, is with the major state investment in Route 17 focused on traffic, we've obviously inherited a situation where there's some opportunity on the commercial redevelopment side as a result of that major public investment. The Board of Supervisors has made it one of their objectives as part of their economic development component of the strategic priorities to figure out how the county can make some strategic investments to redevelop Route 17 with an eye toward quality commercial development. York County doesn't have a lot of commercially zoned property, and so from a tax-based standpoint, the Route 17 corridor is extremely important to our tax base. And it's also the place where our residents consume lots of goods and services. And so while in places Route 17 has some quality development, there are other parts of the corridor where a planner might say the built environment could be improved. What incremental efforts can the county through the Economic Development Authority make that will make a difference? We do not have the resources to do whole-scale redevelopment like some communities would do. We're not talking about buying up blocks of buildings and tearing them down and building massive new developments. So the idea that the EDA settled on with certainly the staff's endorsement and the board's endorsement was how can we, in a targeted manner, identify properties that are ripe for reuse, step in, get our foot in the door, voluntarily acquire a piece, and then clear the site, improve the visual environment, and then market that property for the private sector with the idea that someone would come in and combine other available property with the county property and put the private sector in a position to do something of a higher quality than they would otherwise do. So it is our view and the board's view, and I think the Economic Development Authority's view, that with limited investment resources and basically our budget's about $500,000 a year for this particular program, let's pick off a piece here and there that a private property owner willingly wants to sell at a fair but not exorbitant price, prepare the site, and then shop it to the private sector. We have a very active commercial real estate community, always looking for opportunities, and we have obviously a record of successful private investments along the corridor. But by owning a strategic piece here and there, what the county can do is provide some ability to shape what happens. So if somebody comes in and wants to do something that, let's say, is neutral or not particularly advantageous to the county, we can certainly say, knock yourself out, do it with your money on property you would buy, but not on our site. Right. But if somebody comes in and says, you know, this is what we have in mind, there's a little bit of a gap, we can't quite make that happen because of, you know, cost, market, whatever, then we can put that property in play through the mechanisms of the EDA. Maybe we can help bring utilities to the site, maybe we can value the property favorably to leverage the kind of product we want. And we don't pretend to be smart enough to know exactly what that is. This is not a micro planning exercise where we say, in our wisdom, we think this site is for a restaurant and this site is for an office building and this site is for some kind of entertainment. But what we know are services that maybe aren't as plentiful in the county as we would like. And we know what those might be, and if somebody shows up and is serious and wants to deliver some of those products, we're in a position to help make that happen with relatively modest level of public involvement. And to do this, it requires patience. We can't have ants in our pants to sell the property to the first person that comes along with a checkbook. And the interesting opportunity is when we buy something and clear a site that is essentially unused or in an unattractive state, there's an immediate short-term benefit. We improve the visual environment of our main street, and we probably enhance the value of the private properties in the area.
Yeah, I know one of the things we hear quite often in the Office of Economic Development from our citizens is we'd like some higher end, better restaurants, maybe white tablecloth, you know, the foodie movement, some new chefs, and maybe some different retail that we don't have in the corridor. And perhaps this site could accommodate something like that.
My personal opinion is restaurants is an area of opportunity. Our analysis of that is that most of the big chain restaurants kind of locate by cookie cutter formula. You know, so many people of a certain income in a certain area, and because the Route 17 corridor on the west side has a lot of reservoir property, perhaps we haven't enjoyed a favorable market position. But the trend in the restaurant industry, I mean, to the extent that we in government understand it because we go out to eat, is the trend is toward less chain, smaller, niche type of restaurants. And we believe that York County is perfectly situated for that type of product. We have a critical mass of residents and folks with an income base to utilize those kind of restaurants. And again, we're not in the restaurant business, but maybe we can be in the making a site attractive business.
I think we've got a great opportunity, and the EDA has actually implemented this program. They have acquired a parcel in the corridor that I think could meet these standards and could result in some really quality development.
And since you've been closer to the details on that project than me, maybe it would be useful to just kind of describe how we came to select that particular site as our first target and sort of how that was executed.
Right, so the Economic Development Authority formed a committee, a Route 17 Revitalization Committee, and implemented what they've called the Property Acquisition Program or Property Improvement Program, and went through a pretty exhaustive process using multiple variables to look at which property perhaps rose the highest on the development continuum. In other words, properties that weren't encumbered by environmental issues, by lack of utilities, topography. If there's structures on there, did they have someone actually occupying them that would be an issue? And so,
yeah, we don't want to be in condemnation or any of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely not. So they went through a pretty exhaustive process and looked up and down the entire Route 17 corridor, and then they prioritized 6 areas. And then drilled down even further, and I should say our GIS department was extremely helpful in this endeavor. They've done a wonderful job for us. And they brought in some private sector people to evaluate this as well, not just, of course, the EDA members are private sector, but they brought in additional people that are familiar with the commercial real estate industry. And after we went through that entire process, then they sent out letters to all of the property owners trying to gauge their interest in selling. Obviously, we're not going to pay well above market prices, so it had to be property that we could acquire at a reasonable dollar amount. And after going through that process, we contacted those owners that were willing to sell, and we started negotiating with number 1, and we were able to acquire a parcel, 1.25 acre parcel. Many folks driving up and down the corridor have probably seen it. It used to have a structure on it that was an old beauty salon, I believe, and a house.
I knew it as that old, ugly building.
That's right. The parcel is very near the intersection of Old York Hampton and Route 17. As I said, it's about 1.25 acres. We went in and demolished all the old structures, cleared the property. It looks very, very nice. And to your point earlier, it's adjacent to some other undeveloped property that could be assembled for a larger project. So I think is positioned perfectly for the type of development we're looking for. And anyone out there that's interested can contact the Office of Economic Development, and we would love to talk to them about how we can work with them to make something happen here.
The key is to be strategic about it. You know, there's no urgent need to sell that property. The key is to sell it to the right developer for the right proposal. And in the short run, we've achieved, you know, visual improvement, blight removal. And again, when these letters go out, we make it clear to property owners, if you've got plans for your property, great.
Great, yeah.
Go forward. If you don't and you're interested in selling, the message is you've not won the lottery.
That's right.
But if you are interested in selling for a fair price, we might be interested in buying. And the message for everyone is, you know, there's not enough dollars to do all the things we'd like to do, so we have the luxury of picking and choosing. And from time to time, hopefully, we find that right match, like this example.
Right, let me validate that. We did acquire this property well under the assessed value. So it was a good deal for everybody.
Yeah, and even the demolitions probably were within that $500,000
Actually,
budget.
even within the demolition cost, we stayed under that number.
So hopefully sometime in the next year, we will, through the EDA, will come to the board and perhaps identify another opportunity like that, either maybe near there or in some other part of the corridor. And we've got to be flexible, and we're not limited to just the sites that were identified before.
Sure.
If something else comes along, or we're contacted by an owner or a commercial realtor that says, hey, this might be an opportunity, we'll take a look at it. So this is a long-term patient strategy to gradually alter our Main Street corridor, Route 17, in a way that upgrades the appearance, the level of investment, and the quality of goods and services being made available to our residents and our visitors.
But we do have a focus on also improving the appearance of the corridor and addressing other business environment issues. And I know recently we're taking a look at the sign ordinance to see how that might be adjusted, maybe to be more business friendly, but still ensure we have the right aesthetics in the corridor.
Right, so sign regulation is a big deal for a lot of people. For the individual proprietor, for the individual business, it's obviously important to be able to get your message out there and make it visible. For the county as a whole and for the residents, we have to balance that important consideration with the desire to have an overall visual environment that's pleasing. I mean, after all, in the case of Route 17, you're in many cases approaching historic Yorktown. Right. In the North County on Merrimack Trail, for example, you're maybe coming or going into Williamsburg. So striking that balance and not just allowing any kind of signage at any height and blinking lights and electronic flashing messages that change every few seconds. That's kind of one extreme, which I personally hope we don't go there. But on the other hand, we also need to recognize that sign technology is changing rapidly. Probably in the next 10 or 15 years, almost everybody's going to have electronic signage. And we've really got to update our rules and find that sweet spot that's helpful to business. But then the business community also needs to recognize it's in their interest to maintain a quality built visual environment. And so over the next few months, we are going to organize a little advisory committee to include some members of the business community as well as the public at large to advise us on how our 21st century sign regulations ought to go. And then there'll be a process we'll go through with the Planning Commission and ultimately to the board. And hopefully we get there in a way that all the different concerns and interests are accommodated.
Right. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, Neil and I are going to discuss regional economic development, a topic I think you'll find very interesting. Welcome back to York County Economic Development in Focus. My name is Jim Noel. I'm Director of Economic Development for York County, and joining me is Neil Morgan, York County Administrator. And Neil, you've been in the municipal government business for a while and have had a lot of experience with this. Perhaps you could kind of talk a little bit about why regional economic development is important.
For York County, our revenue estimates are in many ways dependent on how the Hampton Roads regional economy is performing. Because what's going on at Newport News Shipbuilding or Norfolk Naval Air Station or NASA or Jefferson Lab is critically important to housing values in York County, retail sales, meals tax, purchases of new vehicles, and we don't talk about that a lot, but the two things are tied greatly together. And another thing that isn't talked about all that much is how the Hampton Roads economy has been performing. Earlier in my local government career in the 90s and the 2000s, Hampton Roads was doing better than average compared to other major metropolitan areas in the country. Our growth rates were higher. There was more job creation, there was more economic activity, and sort of it was a rising tide lifting all boats things, and that was reflected in the operating budgets of local government. But since the Great Recession, Hampton Roads has done very poorly. In the last data that I saw, Hampton Roads was the second poorest performing major metropolitan area in the country in 2016. Really quite shocking to those of us who have been around here for a while and are kind of used to Hampton Roads outperforming the average. Sure. Put a real hard data point on that. There are less people working in Hampton Roads in 2017 than there were in 2008 at the time the Great Recession started. So when you take that into account and you consider how the regional economy affects York County, it's pretty important that the citizens of York County and the York County government, along with our neighbors, put a little time and effort into the question, how do we collectively work for a better regional economy?
Right, and I think implied in what you said earlier, we've been so tied to the federal budget, and when that, particularly defense spending in some respects, when that was cut back, then that had that direct impact on all of us. And also, I think we need to pay attention, or we do pay attention to what goes on in our neighboring communities because that impacts us directly. So if a company moves into Newport News, then those people could be spending their dollars in York County at our retail stores. There's a multiplier and an effect among all of the localities.
That's right.
So we really do need to pay attention to this. So historically, we've been in different regional arrangements to promote the region, and I know you're familiar with those. We're currently in an organization called the Greater Williamsburg Partnership, working cooperatively with James City County and the City of Williamsburg. But historically, we've been with entire Hampton Roads. We were with just the peninsula localities. So looking forward, how do you kind of envision perhaps this regional economic development promotion evolving?
The way the region has been organized for economic development in the past has largely been about marketing. It's been about the brand, about recruiting companies that may want to make an investment in the area, and how we put out a message about who we are. Are we the Virginia Peninsula? Are we York County? Are we Hampton Roads? Are we Tidewater? Are we Greater Williamsburg? There's been a lot of confusion about that. In York County, if you look at a map, we're some of all of those things. Right. And so that's one of the reasons we struggle with it. The other aspect of that is, and I think you and I have both detected this trend, we're now, and our colleagues in neighboring communities are starting to ask the question, is the effort on the regional side, should it be about marketing and branding? How do you take handoffs from companies that approach the state? Or should it be more about projects? There's a Go Virginia effort that a lot of time and energy is going into, and maybe you can explain a little bit about that. But if what we're worried about is how is Hampton Roads or how is the Virginia Peninsula performing relative to other metropolitan areas in the country, whether we're part of Greater Williamsburg Partnership or the Hampton Roads Economic Development Alliance or the Virginia Peninsula Economic Development Council, all of those branding and marketing activities have occurred, and we're still where we're at today.
Right.
And there's some of us who are starting to wonder, maybe what we ought to be working on is regional product development. So there are some places for those companies that might come through the state, and whether they come through the Greater Williamsburg Partnership or HREDA or some invention that we might come up with in the future, what do we have to offer these folks? Right now, you know, in York County, you've got a great story about quality of life and taxes and schools and crime. But if somebody says, yeah, and show me that 50-acre site for my company for a current investment and future expansion, you got a pretty short story.
It is very challenging, and I will say that in today's environment, it is so competitive, and every community across the country and across the world is competing for what is, in some respects, shrinking private sector investment, and particularly in the manufacturing realm. And you've got to have sites that are shovel ready, and when I say shovel ready, I mean literally they'd like to see it graded and the trees gone, in addition to all the utilities being there and the roads. And so if you don't have those sites, you can't be competitive. And I certainly agree with you that I think perhaps a shift more from a marketing standpoint to actually getting product ready or other projects, and I'll talk about the Go Virginia proposal in a minute, but I think that's paramount to the road to success. I mean, I really do think that's vital.
And another thing is you analyze our regional economy, and as you know, I have a certain bias that I think the Virginia Peninsula is kind of an economic unit that, especially for York County, makes a lot of sense. If you look at where our residents work and shop, you know, a lot of the communities on the Virginia Peninsula are mostly built out. There aren't a lot of big vacant sites, and so the way you did regional economic development 30 years ago just may not make any sense anymore. Recognizing that the way the economy works, somebody might work in one place, own a house in another place, shop in a third place. And
Right.
Can we break out of this kind of zero-sum, beggar thy neighbor kind of approach?
Exactly.
And it's hard because the rules as they're set up by the state, it makes a whole heck of a lot of difference whether that investment occurs on our side of the boundary or on the other side. And can we come up with a new model where we can share both in the investment and in the benefit? That'll, I think, I'm really convinced that's the challenge going forward.
It really is, and I've said this many, many times, the way we're structured tax-wise in Virginia, every locality is a fiefdom unto itself, and you only get to eat what you kill, and that's such a disincentive to regional cooperation. Yet, there are provisions in the state code that allow us to form authorities that could promulgate revenue sharing among the localities. And I think that would just be a much smarter way to go. The other thing that's a challenge in part is the state even has different objectives than we do. So they get their revenue from the income taxes, so they're concerned about the jobs, where we get the lion's share of our money from the real estate investments. Right. So it's a challenging system, but I do think there are ways to approach it, and Go Virginia has been an effort to do just that. Just a little bit of background, Go Virginia is something that bubbled up from the private sector, wanting localities to work more cooperatively to achieve better results in bringing in new investment into Virginia, backed very strongly by the General Assembly, and they've put their money where their mouth is. And so there's an opportunity now for communities and educational institutions and federal agencies to come together with joint projects that would hopefully improve our economic development program in Virginia. So in order to put together a Go Virginia project, we felt it would be prudent, since this was based on regionalism and working with our neighbors, to get together with all of our communities on the peninsula to discuss possible projects. And out of that process, one bubbled up that happens to be in York County, And the concept is creating an unmanned systems testing and demonstration area. And the specific spot would be on the former fuel farm property, which is located kind of between the Colonial Parkway, Penniman Road, and the Naval Weapons Station, an area of about 462 acres.
So near water country.
Right, and just past Kings Creek Plantation, another landmark. This property is surplus. The state has it on the market for sale and seemed to be an excellent location because of some FAA regulations where you could test unmanned aerial vehicles and unmanned vehicles, surface vehicles, and there's access to some water. And this is not my idea. This was an idea that really bubbled up from the industry, from a couple of the companies in York County, Avid Aerospace and Dronecar in particular, and some other companies on the peninsula, that they need a place close to their businesses to test these things and improve them and demonstrate them for customers. That this is something that would actually really help them grow their business, which the ultimate goal of Go Virginia is better paying jobs for our citizens.
So just to make sure everybody understands, under these rules of Go Virginia that have been put in place, you have to show in your application that your proposal relates to one of the business clusters that has growth potential in Hampton Roads.
Right.
So the drone park, as we sort of call it, the unmanned systems idea, that is already a strong business sector in Hampton Roads, mostly with a defense orientation. And the idea is to tap into some of that capability and help that business grow into the civilian world. And one of the problems is you either have to go to the Wallops Island or Blacksburg to test these things. And we all have these businesses around here, they're already doing DoD work. Wouldn't it be good for those businesses to grow those jobs, if we had a place in easy commuting distance to do it? And here we've got a piece of surplus state land that's just kind of sitting there. They haven't figured out what to do with it. It's close to the interstate. It's got some utilities already in existence and road access. And interestingly, while it's in your county, you know, the other peninsula communities were strongly in favor of this, and this kind of goes back to our earlier conversation.
Exactly.
You know, sort of the region working together more on a project basis. How can we come up with something that adds value, grows business, grows jobs and income?
And this is a tangible asset that we can market then, and when we go out into the world to talk to companies, hey, we have a place where you could locate, because there's a land for a light industrial park for these companies that could locate right across from this important asset where they can test and demonstrate their products. And I think that's critical. The other piece of this that we need to really focus on is we've invited any locality in Hampton Roads to invest in this project and then share in the revenue that's generated there, which is really, you know, in some respects, the heart of the whole Go Virginia initiative.
So the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission unanimously endorsed this project, and we've just made application, and congratulations to you and your team who put a lot of work into that. Folks may be wondering, so if we win, if we get some money, what happens? So this is not suddenly going to be this massive industrial park with all these businesses and jobs. Right. It would be a slow incremental thing.
Yes.
Part of it would be on this site if we succeed, but part of it would be the growth of these businesses that already exist. So it might not be that obvious to the eye, you know, a 10,000 square foot building in a drone testing facility. You might say, well, you know, what's the big deal? But part of that is what it does to a sector that already exists in our regional economy.
That's exactly right. And as we noted earlier, I mean, the most economic development is helping your existing companies grow and prosper. And this would be an asset that could actually have, I think, some impact. And I'm not just saying, I mean, that's coming from the companies, that right. This is something that they need and want, and they've identified could help them grow.
So if anybody out there watching this has any influence, this could all move faster if the state would contribute the land rather than having the region have to pay for it.
That would help immensely. And we hope that our application will be successful. It was submitted on October 31st, which was the deadline, and now there's a review and approval process that we've got to go through, and it could be great news for us. And economic development, not just in York County and the peninsula, but all of Hampton Roads. So Neil, I think we've covered a lot of ground here today. Thank you for being here. And we are going to break away now and come back for our next segment with Melissa Davidson, Assistant Director of Economic Development for York County, and talk about some exciting existing business and entrepreneurial efforts that we're doing not just in York County, but on the entire Virginia Peninsula. Welcome back to York County Economic Development in Focus. Joining us now is Melissa Davidson, Assistant Director of Economic Development. Melissa, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Melissa, you have been working on two major local programs that involve investment in York County, our Home-Based Business Program and Start Peninsula.
Yes, actually both of those initiatives have major events each fall, and we recently had the Home-Based Business Resource Fair and Conference, which was at the Stryker Center this year in Williamsburg. It's a joint initiative between Williamsburg, James City County, and York County, and this initiative is very much focused strictly on home-based businesses. So we really want to help these folks, we want to help them grow, we want to give them resources to support them, and so this annual event is well attended. This year we had over 20 exhibitors, we had over 20 speakers, and we had over 100 attendees. So the event, the home-based business event, in the morning we start out with about 30 minutes of networking, and this really gives our attendees time to visit with our resource providers in the exhibit fair portion of it. After that, we jump right into the conference. We have morning sessions, and those are actually emceed by our very own Board of Supervisor, Jeff Wassmer. And after that, we have the rapid fire morning sessions where it's very fast-paced information that's coming at these folks. And then later in the afternoon, we have more sessions where they can really get more in-depth with our speakers. So we bring in amazing speakers to talk about everything from accounting to marketing, anything a home-based business would really benefit from. And then we close the day out with a little bit more networking time, which allows them to ask questions of the speakers and to really get some more time with our exhibitors.
Right, I think as I noted earlier, the participants seemed very, very engaged. I was in a session where they got a great class on QuickBooks, for example. Absolutely. And Mr. Wassmer was wonderful, very motivational since he started his business in his home. What a perfect speaker for the event. Thought it went very, very well. And the Home-Based Business Program has gotten some terrific recognition.
It has, actually. In 2017, we were recognized by the Virginia Association of Counties as their top award for the program. We were also recognized on a nationwide level by the National Association of Counties, and that was their gold award for the program. And then the International Economic Development Council recently recognized us as well for the program. So we were very excited about that, and NACO actually chose us as one of the top 100 brilliant ideas at work.
Wow.
So it's quite exciting.
Impressive.
We're very proud of this program. It's a program that we really feel helps a lot of people, and it was a niche market that we maybe felt like we could do better. We weren't helping them quite enough, and we really felt like this program did just that. So we're pretty passionate about it.
So how many home-based businesses do we have in York County? I mean, is that prevalent?
It is. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. When we did the research, when we were looking at doing this program, we were pretty surprised to find that 2/3 of York County's business licenses are actually from home-based businesses.
And as you noted, this was a regional endeavor this year at the Stryker building in the city of Williamsburg, which proved to be a great facility for the event.
It was, and ironically, the Start Peninsula event, which is an entrepreneurial pitch type competition that we hold each year, that's actually at the Stryker Center this year as well. That is a regional event. We host that along with all of the peninsula localities. So not just Williamsburg and James City, but also Hampton, Poquoson, and Newport News. It's a 3-day weekend event where folks come in on Friday evening and then they work on their business idea all weekend long. So we have mentors that we bring in, we have speakers, and so they really are able to finesse their business plan and their marketing plan. And then by the time Sunday night rolls around, which is another fun night, they get to pitch again, and then the top 3 can win prizes. They can win time in an incubator. So there's a lot of incentive for them to come out and pitch their ideas.
Now, about how many people pitch on Friday night?
So Friday night we have about 30 folks that will pitch, and really the ideas run the gamut from everything from interesting lollipops to dog bowls to technology apps. We've seen it all. We really have.
Now, the people that aren't selected Friday night, because they winnow down to the top 10,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Is there an opportunity for the people that aren't chosen to continue to participate?
Oh, absolutely. And that's the real benefit in the event, because even if you're not chosen, you're encouraged to stick around and either join a team and see how they go through the business planning process, which can help you if you decide to do your business in the future. Or you can just stick around and meet with the mentors, which is hugely beneficial to your own business.
And I guess the mentors range from intellectual property attorneys to marketing,
absolutely, accountants, lawyers. We have everyone.
That's great. Now, the Launchpad, the Greater Williamsburg Incubator, which serves York County, James City, and the city of Williamsburg, they play a pretty key role in this event too, don't they?
They do. They have been involved since the beginning of this event, so for many years now, and they provide incubator space for the winners. They're one of many incubators on the peninsula who offer that, but the winners can choose to locate there. And they also provide support services, so they have mentors internally inside the network of their incubator that can help these folks.
I think both of these programs are really addressing the latest trends in business development. I mean, how
Absolutely.
businesses form today, and a lot of people are operating out of their home, and
Yes.
then a lot of entrepreneurs are becoming the new way to grow jobs in our country. And
Absolutely.
certainly these programs will help York County benefit from both of those things.
They will, and we're excited that they become more regional as well. This trend is not just York County, it's a nationwide trend, even worldwide really. I mean, folks are just, they're cutting costs for their businesses, and in order to stay alive, they're going home. They're staying home, cutting those overhead
Right.
costs. And so, it's a good program, it's becoming a regional thing, and we're excited to have that regional support.
If you'd like more information about our programs or anything we've discussed today, please go to our website, yesyorkcounty.com. And thank you very much for watching.